Today we're looking at a really strange situation happening in Meghalaya. You've got the police saying crime is going down, but the people living there are saying, no way, it's actually getting worse. So how can both of these things be true at the same time? We're going to get to the bottom of this paradox, looking at the official data versus the real human experience. This question, this really just hits you, right? It's the whole issue in a nutshell. It puts your gut feeling, your personal sense of safety, up against a spreadsheet of official numbers. And this isn't just about data. It's really about trust. Who do you trust? And here it is, laid out plain as day. On one side, you have an open letter from citizens talking about a pronounced spike in crimes. Then, on the other side, you have the state's top police official claiming a declining trend. They can't both be right. Or can they? Let's dig into the evidence, and we'll start with the view from the street. All right, first things first, let's look at what the citizens themselves are saying. And this isn't just a vague feeling of being unsafe. They came with receipts, specific numbers, and some really serious concerns that they laid out in an open letter. Here's the first hard number they put forward: 187. That's the number of burglaries reported in Shillong in just 10 months. See, this isn't a feeling anymore, is it? This is a concrete number that really grounds all that public anxiety in actual, real-world events. And that number, 187, well, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's part of a bigger trend. It represents a 20% jump from the same time last year. A spike like that isn't just a statistic you read about. It's something people feel in their neighborhoods, and it directly fuels that growing sense of insecurity. And listen, it's not just about things getting stolen from houses. The letter paints a much bigger, much more disturbing picture. It talks about a spiraling drug problem, brazen violence happening in broad daylight, and, just tragically, the murder of 2 minors. When you put all this together, you can see why people feel like the authorities have lost control. Okay, so that's the reality on the street. It's pretty grim. Now let's switch gears and look at the official story coming from the police, which, as you're about to see, paints a very, very different picture. So here's the exact statement from the Director General of Police. And notice the very careful wording here. They're talking about crimes against minors, and they're looking at it over a 3-year period. Now, that might be 100% statistically true, but it totally sidesteps the recent 20% spike in burglaries, right? It doesn't address the other concerns people have. It's a classic case of two sides using completely different sets of data to talk past each other. So how do we make sense of this disconnect? Well, this is key. There's this concept called crime perception versus crime statistics. Your perception, what you feel, is often shaped by shocking recent events, like the ones in the citizens' letter. But statistics, they're designed to measure broad, long-term trends. The wild thing is, one can be spiking up while the other's trending down. And in a way, both can be true. But this whole thing goes deeper than just a mismatch in data. The source material we're looking at suggests there's a much more fundamental reason that crime is sticking around no matter what the long-term stats say. This is where we get to the real aha moment, the why behind this whole problem. The source calls it the deterrence collapse. It's a simple name for a really powerful idea, that the very systems meant to stop criminals from committing crimes in the first place are broken. This whole theory basically rests on 3 pillars, or 3 questions a criminal might ask. Number 1, what are the odds I'll get caught? Number 2, even if I get caught, what are the odds I'll actually get convicted? And number 3, even if I'm convicted, is the punishment really that bad? When the answer to all 3 is pretty low, well, criminals make a very rational choice. Crime pays. And this isn't just a theory, right? You can see it in the real-world cracks in the system. Low detection? Well, that comes from not having enough police on patrol or from having poor forensic capabilities. Low conviction? That's what happens when you have slow courts and weak prosecution. And lenient punishment? That just means the consequences aren't strong enough to act as a real deterrent. These are the real problems. And this just nails it. This is such a crucial point. A government can announce all the new initiatives it wants, special courts, more cameras, whatever. But those are just announcements. What really stops crime, what creates real deterrence, is action. Criminals need to see other criminals getting arrested quickly and punished for sure. So, knowing all this, how do we actually move forward? Well, once you understand this idea of a deterrence collapse, the whole conversation changes. We can stop arguing about whose numbers are right and start asking much smarter, more focused questions that could actually lead to real solutions. So, here's the first big question we should be asking. Forget about arrest numbers for a second. That's only half the story. What really matters is the conviction rate. Think about it. If hundreds of people are arrested, but only a tiny handful are ever convicted, what message does that send? To criminals, it says you can probably beat the system. And for citizens, it just means the cycle of crime keeps going. The second question drills down on the speed of justice. It's not just if justice is served, but when. If a case takes years and years to crawl through the court system, any deterrent effect is totally lost. As they say, justice delayed is justice denied. And I'd add that deterrence delayed is deterrence denied too. For a victim, that wait is awful. And for a criminal, a slow system is nothing to be afraid of. And finally, this is the really critical question that helps you cut through the noise. Anytime an official says crime is declining, you have to ask, are they counting fewer actual crimes, or are they just changing the math? Maybe they're using a much longer time frame that just happens to smooth out a recent, really dangerous spike. Asking this question arms you. It lets you look past the headlines and get a much better sense of what's really going on.